Okay, guys, we are here, we are live, and the stream is correct this time. So, ROGAL DORN, we have 1 hour to see this and to hopefully not cry over it. So, yeah, well, you did tell me to get tissues, but, well, I don't know all the details in general of the story, but, yeah, I hope that we can manage. Nevertheless, I'm very interested to see how things look from Rogal Dorn's side of things and how they're gonna be told by Baldermort. So let's see it.
Welcome, gentle listener. Before we continue, I would implore you to listen to my first entry concerning ROGAL Dorn, the Praetorian of Terra. Without the context therein contained, I feel you would be robbing yourself of the impact of the information that is presented here. But as always, I am at your disposal. Also, I would have it noted, gentle listener, that I have omitted so much as to make a veteran of the setting enraged. But do remember that this is an introduction only, and not an attempt to encapsulate the entirety of the events to which ROGAL Dorn was party, nor an attempt to explain the entirety of the drama. For there are many perspectives, so much information, that people retreat into the world of Warhammer for months, years, and even decades, as a refuge from the vicissitudes of the world. As I stated in my previous entry for ROGAL, it is the very appeal of the Warhammer universe. Its scope, its depth. So, let us continue the tale of the greatest story of the Warhammer 40k universe. The reason it is loved so deeply. Its very soul. I speak not of ROGAL Dorn specifically, but of the dreaded moment. The darkest point in this fictional world. What I call the longest second, which is contained herein.
Yeah, let's hear it. Oh, thank you. Thank you, dear Ivy.
First, let us paint the scene. We left it with ROGAL on Terra, Earth, the birthplace of humanity. But let us familiarize ourselves with the cast of players, the stars of the dark drama that is about to unfold. For without this knowledge we cannot appreciate the man of whom I speak, ROGAL, and the titanic struggle which he faced, practically alone. We know that there were 20 Primarchs, but 2 had passed from history before the rebellion of Horus, forever afterwards called the Horus Heresy, began. 8 fell to chaos and sided with Horus, making a full half of the total number of the Legiones Astartes, the Space Marines.
The Space Marines.
First, we shall discuss those Primarchs and their legions that remained faithful. 9 should have been loyal, so why was ROGAL so outnumbered and alone? The simple truth is that Horus Lupercal fell to evil far before he raised his treacherous banners on Istvan V, years before. While invested with the power and authority of War Master, High Lord and General of all of the forces of the Emperor, Horus plotted, schemed, and planned. He knew which Primarchs, and by dint of this, their legions, that would never recant their loyalty to their father, the master of mankind, the Emperor. So, knowing full well of his inevitable need to rebel openly, he prepared. Oh, long did he prepare before he turned the colour of his cloth. We know that he schemed to destroy a large segment of the Loyalist armies by deed of ambush, as I have related at the betrayal of Istvan V, the drop site massacre, where full 3 Loyalist legions were shattered. The legions destroyed were the Iron Hands, sons of Ferrus Manus, who was slain. The Salamanders, sons of Vulcan, and the Raven Guard, the sons of Corvus Corax. But that left 6 more. So in the months and years before he raised his banners and proclaimed himself, Horus contrived to send them to places so far-flung or dangerous that they would not be able to stop him when the final deed was realized. Rebut Gilliman, the Primarch of the most numerous and most organized legion, the Ultramarines, was sent as far to the galactic east as Horus could send him without raising suspicion. But more than this, he also was led into a trap laid by Lorgar. Leman Russ, the Wolf Lord and self-professed Emperor's executioner, who led the Vulca Fenrica, the Space Wolves, also was sent far afield, but we know he returned to Terra, but then went on a rampage, and was secluded and harried until he was unable to support Rogal. Lion L. Johnson, the Lion, the Primarch of the First Legion, the Dark Angels, was sent to the galactic north. For the Lion was a dire threat to Horus and his rebellious brothers, as he was a natural genius in the arts of war, his legion the most lauded after only the sons of Horus. He was sent as far away as Horus could practically get away with. Horus, like all of the Primarchs, had a natural fear of the Lion on an instinctive level. He was neutralized thus as the highest priority. Sanguinius, the Angel and Primarch of the 9th Legion, the Blood Angels. Horus knew this particular brother was also a dire threat to any rebellion, and Horus connived to send him into a trap again in the galactic north. But for the full tale of the trap, we will have to wait until I can perform an entry for this, the most loved of all Primarchs. Ferrus Manus was dead. Vulcan was missing, presumed dead also. Corvus Corax's legion was a shadow of its power, denuded of numbers after the Dropside massacre, despite Corvus's attempt to artificially increase his numbers through cloning. He was betrayed again by the Alpha Legion, and he failed. Thus Rogal asked him, the master of the raid and surprise attack, to skirt the oncoming juggernaut of the traitors and attack their supply lines. Thus it was that Corvus played merry hell with the rear of the traitor advance, but never enough to do more than slow them and annoy them with constant inconvenience. Horus knew his craft and had prepared for all eventualities. This left only Jagatai and his white scars, and Rogal Dorn and his imperial fists to fight the traitors. But there were so many of them, so well led, so many Primarchs in the field, so many forces that had turned. But let us explore them now, the legions of evil, the cohorts of chaos, so we can grasp the magnitude of Rogal's heroism. For any human must be judged by the caliber of their opposition, and oh, what opposition Rogal had to contend with. The forces of evil. Lorgar Aurelian, the Primarch of the Word-Bearers Legion, who is known as the First Traitor, accredited with being the spider behind the scenes that facilitated the fall of the War Master. Lorgar had turned to chaos years before Horus. He was sent to the worlds of Ultramar, the home of the Ultramarines, and met with them as a friend, only to turn on them in a well-laid ambush on the world of Kalf. The attempt was to do unto the Ultramarines what the traitors had done at the Dropside massacre, but though the Word-Bearers attacked with fury and completely unlooked for, the Ultramarines were more organized and ever prepared, and the projected massacre instead turned into a battle that Rebut was winning. Angron, dubbed by many as the Red Angel, the Primarch of the World Eaters, who was sent with Lorgar to the east and performed surprise raids on the worlds of Ultramar, the home of Reboot Guilliman and his Ultramarines, while they were waylaid at Calth. Angron visited a high toll from the worlds of Ultramar, but was soon pushed back by the well-organized and professional forces of the Ultramarines. Lorgar then enacted a huge dark ritual that summoned a warp storm, called the Ruin Storm in history, and cut the galactic east off from Holy Terra. Thus were the Ultramarines and Reboot unable to answer the call to Terra, because they did not hear it. So dire were things that Reboot Guilliman actually believed that Horus had already won, and the Emperor was already dead. Thus, he did not even look to Terra until later. Conrad Kurz, called the Night Haunter, Primarch of the Night Lords, was playing a strange game with his loyalist brothers on the other side of the Ruin Storm. But that is for another time. Alpharius and Omegon, the twin Primarchs and Lords of the Alpha Legion, were not with Horus's main thrust, but we should get to them in due course.
Yeah, they're very strange.
Fulgrim, Primarch of the Emperor's Children, who, over the time of the rebellion, not only fell to evil, but became a demon prince, infused with the power of the dark gods, and twisted out of all recognition in the service of the god Slanesh, the Lord of Excess. Mortarion, Primarch of the Death Guard, also became a thing of horror, and he also became a demon prince, but this time to the service of the god Nurgle, the Lord of Decay. Perturabo, Primarch of the Iron Warriors, who had an enduring hatred of ROGAL Dorn and all of his sons, the Imperial Fists.
Hey guys.
Magnus the Red, Primarch of the Thousand Sons,
Here he
who had
is.
also been transformed into a terrifying apparition of evil, a demon prince of Tzeentch, the Lord of Change. All did as instructed by Horus, well, within limits. Their combined legions inexorably ground forward, crushing all resistance in their path. Eventually, they all met with the arch-traitor, the War Master Horus Lupercal, on the world of Alanor Prime, the very site where Horus had been elevated to War Master. From there, they moved forward into the last phase of their campaign, the attack on the Sol System, the heart of the Imperium, where Terra was.
Yeah, he did paint the picture, alright.
This may have seemed like the beginning of a biblical book, the unending names, but I wish to update you on the situation and, more importantly, to graphically outline the forces arrayed against ROGAL as the unofficial war master of the Loyalist armies. Each Primarch was a titan of war, a genius, a charismatic leader, and a terror. Every single one of them. Yet ROGAL held them back, delaying them with endless energy, tactical brilliance, and unquenchable zeal. He did this for 7 years. Imagine that. To fight against the most experienced warriors the human race had ever seen, trained by the Emperor for decades, if not centuries longer than ROGAL or any of his brothers. Yet ROGAL Dorn had these forces at bay for over half a decade.
Jesus.
He never tired. He never succumbed to grief. He never gave in to despair. No matter how many times he lost, no matter how many times he was pushed back. Jagatai was with him, and at points also Leman Russ, but none had the huge weight of command on their shoulders. Everything that went wrong, every defeat, every setback was laid at the feet of ROGAL, yet he never once lost faith. ROGAL was playing a game of chess against his brother, Horus, but Horus had 9 queens to ROGAL's 2, and thrice the number of pawns, knights, bishops, and rooks. Phenomenal courage. But in all of this, where was the master of mankind? Where was the Emperor, I hear you ask? Alas, the full story we cannot hope to cover here, but in brief. He had returned to Earth to create his own webway, a method of travel that would not be reliant on the warp. And that was so infested with the demons and other enemies of humanity, he was trying to secure the greatest safety of humanity, and negate the need for travel via the warp, as he remembered the age of strife, old night, and how warp storms had almost destroyed the human race. Thus he was attempting to create a transit system that would forever remove the need for any human to be exposed to that horrible dimension. He was building for the future, as he so trusted that Horus and his brothers would continue the Great Crusade and bring peace and freedom to humanity. He had expected the outcome to be foregone, or he would never have retreated from active leadership of the Crusade. More is the pity. It is a complicated story, which we will explore more in other notes, but Magnus, before he turned to evil, attempted to warn his father of the rebellion of Horus, but in doing so he burst the wards, the mystic psychic shields that the Emperor had erected around his palace to protect his webway project. When this happened, the warp flooded into his subrealm. The gateway to the warp that was to be the first door into his new webway was left open, and all of the powers of chaos sent legion after legion of foul beings, the Neverborn, their demons, to try to crush the Emperor and use his own gateway to invade the imperium, the real world, on the ground of Terra itself. Thus the master of mankind had no choice but to exert all of his energy and bend all of his will and godlike psychic powers to fending off the endless tide of evil that assailed his very hearth, the palace on Terra. The majority of his bodyguard, his custodies, who were even more powerful in combat than space marines, were with him in this subrealm attempting to hold the line. Thus he could not break his concentration, his great exertion, for even an instant to assist his son, Rogal, in his labours. I will note now that there is an important figure I am leaving out of this recounting, along with many events and nuances, that of Malcador the Sigillite. But for his history again, we must wait for his own entry. He did his best to assist Rogal, but the burden of the war was not on his shoulders, and not at his command. A psyker of almost limitless power though he was not a Primarch, and could not offer Rogal the support that he most needed. So we can see that Rogal fought on. I can honestly state that there are few deeds in any mythology, fiction or fable that can come even close to the magnitude of the bravery, tenacity, or genius exhibited by Rogal, despite it being a constant string of defeats. Those defeats exacted a tithe of blood from the traitors that they could scarce even imagine. But it got worse. Despite the pain of the rebellion to Rogal, the situation got much worse. While he tried to outthink, outmaneuver, and outgeneral a plethora of his brothers, his very rear was assailed, and the stage left Alpharius and his Alpha Legion. Alpharius and Omegon, the only twin Primarchs, had been the last to be found by the Great Crusade, and very late in the day. So much so that the Emperor left his training to Horus. So it was to Horus that they were both loyal. Alpharius and Omegon were the little brothers to all of the Primarchs. They had been found so late. As such, they could never hope to accrue the accolades and glories that others had accrued over 2 centuries or more of the Great Crusade. And what is more, the Alpha Legion under Alpharius and Omegon were very unlike the other legions. They acted subtly and with secrecy, manipulation and guile, where most of the other legions fought directly. Many derided the Alpha Legion and their lords for being cowardly and capricious, but Alpharius gained results all right. Alas, Alpharius was to prove to be a terrible thorn in the side of the Loyalists when he finally revealed himself. His legion had been sent earlier than any other and had prepared the way. Alpharius activated sleeper units all across the Sol system and brought about pandemonium. ROGAL had to contend with so much already, but ever did the sleeper units of Alpharius cause carnage, instability and mayhem wherever they activated. More than this, they shook the very spirit of the loyalist soldiery, for the Alphas made them question the ability of ROGAL, and burned, bombed or sabotaged where the hurt would be most. The hurt most often targeted was the very image of ROGAL Dorn and his ability and his authority. It was not only that. Alpharius made it so personal. He even went so far as to inform ROGAL that he had informants in the palace itself. How, you may ask? In the investory, a huge hall in the inner sanctum of the palace, there once stood 20 statues, each a perfect likeness of the 20 Primarchs. 2 were destroyed when the Primarchs fell from grace and their history was expunged from all record, at the command of the Emperor himself. And they are the greatest secret of the Warhammer universe, and not in 30 years has it categorically been stated what happened to them. There are theories. Alpharius' spies blew up all but 2 of the statues, one being himself, Alpharius, the second being ROGAL Dorn, a declaration of war, and also an attempt to unsettle and intimidate ROGAL, if not the warrior within him, Dorn. But he may as well have been spitting in the wind. ROGAL fought for something he could never understand, let alone appreciate. ROGAL fought for a dream that clearly even baffled Alpharius. His adversaries continued to underestimate ROGAL at every turn, to their later regret, all of them. ROGAL also knew that it meant something even more terrible. It meant that Horus had turned years before ROGAL knew. Horus had been planning this great betrayal for years. How this must have hurt ROGAL, to know he may even have had communication with his brother when he was already at...
Okay, I just have to say something. I just don't want to talk over, over the video. So, while the whole thing that he is telling the story, the way that he's telling it, it turns out that when Horus turned and he started everything, to reveal everything, to do his campaign to destroy the Emperor, advance to Terra, all of those things. And of course, before that, the other Primarch of the World Bears. I mean, after that, it became like a wave of treachery, and all of the other Primarchs that were like unassuming and not giving any indication, as far as I know, that they're, going towards the, the betrayal side of things. All of a sudden, they're all like pop like balloons, and they're like, oh, I'm gonna betray the Emperor. I'm also gonna betray the Emperor. Oh, you see now, you losers, are gonna make you suffer, I mean, one group of Primarchs, towards the other. So it's like, it's a bit confusing from that perspective, how they all were having this, well, they must have had this in themselves before that whole thing happened with the Horus heresy. They had to already have the seeds of treachery. Otherwise, they would not be so quick to do it, because everything just aligned perfectly for Horus. He decided to finally betray the Emperor. The world got out, and all the other Primarchs, they're like, oh yeah, I'm already ready. Yeah, I'm already Slaaneshi here, Fulgrim. Oh yeah, I'm already like, oh, awesome, Horus, what to destroy now? Oh yeah, I have Slipper Legions, I'm the twin Primarch. You know what I mean? So everything just became like one after the other, after the other, after the other. Like, what the heck? If I was the emperor, I would be like, I thought that I know my sons, I thought that I taught them well. I thought that, they were with me. I thought that we had some kind of a respect, at least, and loyalty. But all of a sudden, half of them just like F off, emperor. Like, what is. I mean, that's very interesting to me. That specific thing that everybody, I mean, half of them turned against the emperor, like, no questions asked, like, awesome. Turning against the emperor, like, right away. And Magnus, since you mentioned Magnus, he was like, oh, father, I'm gonna break this barrier. I'm the strongest psychic here. He was full with pride, and he was very like, what's that word? A bit immature in that aspect, because he didn't reason like, oh, this barrier must be here for a reason. I don't know the reason, but I'm gonna break it. Like, okay, even like somebody from the street, if you're to explain to them, okay, so the emperor made this barrier and you're not supposed to break it because he obviously wants that barrier to be in place, to protect something. It's pretty fortified, it's pretty strong, it's just like nothing else in the galaxy. It's obviously there for a freaking reason, and a very, very particular reason, because it's strong. It is, protect. It is protecting something. But Magnus was like so arrogant in his ass, probably. He was like, no, I have to do it. So there's no like communication otherwise, like besides psychic communications. I mean, I know that there is the warp can, disrupt them and all of that, but the point is that they all have some kind of a emotional immaturity to them, all the Primarchs. Like, they are listening to their feelings, they're getting butthurt about things, they're getting, they're listening to their pride, uh, always pride over wisdom. And you will think that that's going to be different for someone that, I mean, for people that are not people, and that they're supposed to be demigods, that they're supposed to be, be better in every single way, but they're still expressing one of the lowest of the low qualities that you can possibly express as any intelligent being. So those are just my observations, you can say, not only from how how Baldermort here is telling the story, but just in general, along with how he's telling it, how I already read it, and all of that. It just seems that all the Primarchs are babies, or at least half of them are babies. None of them have the values that are supposed to be having. I mean, the emperor is such an intelligent guy, to say the least. He had the wisdom of the whole humanity's development thus far, and he created them for the exact reason to serve him in that way, so he can build the empire, so he can fortify the human legacy, so to speak, by creating an empire and expanding humanity, making humanity the most, the best race, the best humanoids in the universe, you can say. And all of a sudden, half of them are like trash inside, I mean. And they already had such a seeds in them. It's not like, they were never uh, supposed to do that. I mean, they are already with so many flaws. How they think, how they act, how they're jumping into conclusions, so they think that the emperor is now a very bad dad and all of those things, very, very bad leader. You know what I mean? I'm trying to put a bit of humor here, but I mean that, yeah, all of those things, just very, I don't know how to say it. I mean, it's like it doesn't make much sense from that aspect that the emperor would create some beings that are supposed to do something, but half of them are like faulty, like faulty batteries or something. And the emperor is like surprised by this, and he is hurt and everything else, and I don't know. I mean, we can talk about this all night, but we have to continue the video. Just my thoughts that just building up in me as well while I'm listening to the video. They are supposed to be so noble, and like a few Primarchs are like super noble and super gifted, like ROGAL Dorn and Ribute Gilliman. They're like the top, smartest, most truly noble guys that have honor and wisdom and intelligence and everything else. And Horus is the evil version of that, where he has the intelligence, but he's not that wise. He allowed himself to be swayed by chaos. He thought that they will offer him something that the emperor couldn't. He thought that chaos is more honest than the emperor, but in reality, they're just using him for their tool, and that's supposed to be clear to him. But to be clear to him, he has to have a lot of wisdom, and it seems like that he is once again acting on his quick judgment and anger and just very low qualities, very very low human qualities that are not supposed to be present in such beings. If there are the beings that they're presented to be, the quality of their whole everything doesn't correspond with what they're made out to be. So it's like, here are these beings, the Primarchs, they're this and that, they're like demigods. And if you're human, you'll be like, oh yeah, I mean, I can't even assimilate those guys, they're super amazing, but they're super flawed, just like any human. So, only physically they are superior to everyone else, besides the emperor, but in terms of value system and qualities and all that, they're so easily swayed to one side or the other. Very weird. Yeah, I'm just, yeah. Okay, I'm just gonna look at your comments because I see that you're doing this on the keyboard all the time. And yeah, like I've said, when you read something, you're going to have your own pyramid in your head. That's the prisma. That's how it's called. I don't know if the English is exactly the same, but in which the light passes through and then the rainbow comes out from the other side. That's how everybody. I mean, if this is a metaphor for how we understand things, everybody's gonna understand it differently. But yeah, from my perspective, this is how this looks to me. There's a similar thing in other genres and other fantasies where, let's say, gods are presented to be very powerful, but all of a sudden they have so many flaws, and all of a sudden they're just jackasses, and you're like, why am I looking up to this ass? Like Ares in Xena, he's complete ass, and he has so many flaws and so many weak spots. He's so easy to, how to say, if you know his weak spot, he is as easy to manipulate as any other human. So for a being that lived thousands upon thousands of years, that kind of doesn't make any sense. Everybody gonna learn from their mistakes and gonna realize their weaknesses sooner or later if they're honest to themselves. I think. Okay. I can dig into this too long, so I'm just gonna read your comments and continue with the video, unless you said something. And in 40k, I see that everybody are seeing this through 1,000 prismas, so to speak. And that's the other thing. Everybody has their own view of things. Babies. And demigod is such a loose term, like really, such a loose term. Demigod is really supposed to be someone that is half a god and half mortal, but it's used so for everything that it just doesn't mean anything anymore, you know? Kind of loses its value at one point. They're all did, grew up on Earth's places that they conquered, and they did seem like they did develop a lot of warrior qualities, each and every one of them in a different way on their respective worlds. So I wouldn't say that the fact that they didn't grow up with the emperor from birth is the only factor, because like you see here, Ribute Gilliman and Rogal Dorn are just examples, and also Sanguinius, although Sanguinius that did had his bloodlust, but overall he was very pure overall compared to the other guys, you know what I mean? But he had this flaw, so mm-hmm. Well, off topic, I'm gonna just play the video. Yeah, I'm just gonna play the video because it's long enough. But as I mean, as he said, when you start to talk about something, there's another thing connected to it, so you can think about it a lot anyway. Everything is connected to the topic, but here's about this one long second, so continuing.
Traitor in his heart, if not by proclamation. It is a wonder that Rogal was not driven mad by the combination of grief, strain, and constant defeat. For any other Primarch, even Horus,
Constant
would have been
defeat.
too much.
You just said that he was holding his own when he's supposed to.
No matter the reality of the situation staring him in the face, the inevitability of his defeat, he still believed. Rogal believed that if he just held out long enough, fought hard enough, exacted enough of a blood price from the traitors, that either they would break and fall upon one another, as all traitors and the faithless always do eventually, or that more of his loyalist brothers would come to his aid in the defense of their father. Every day, he knew, was a day closer to the moment when the lion, the angel, or Reboot may arrive, if he could just hold on. Nor was Rogal permitted a moment's respite, even when there was a temporary break in the direct hostilities, as the traitors rallied for another sally. For in these moments he was either dealing with the actions of Alpharius, or he was performing another task he found odious in the extreme. Rogal was the master of defensive war and fortification, no matter how much Petarado may claim otherwise. He was plying his trade to the highest level he had ever done. He dug deep. Rogal was making the Sol system a death trap of overlapping fire, concentric circles of defenses. But his least favorite task was the marring of the Emperor's palace. Over centuries, the palace on Terra had been crafted into a thing of sublime beauty and a testament not only to the power of the Emperor, but the creativity, glory, and beauty possible within the heart of humanity.
I really wish I could see that.
To mar it with iron and granite and steel. Colonnades of beautiful marble were replaced with gun emplacements and death traps. Warrens of previously scintillating tessellated mosaic were replaced with traps and hard points. Rogal never betrayed his feelings to those around him, but how he must have wanted to weep for the marring of the work of thousands. The shining beacon of human endeavor that was now replaced with a glorified bunker.
Yeah.
Finally, as the forces of Horus mustered on Alinor, Alpharius came out into the open. He had powered down a vast fleet of his ships, his men in stasis, so they could not be detected by any of ROGAL's many listening outposts and scanners, and simply used the tides of space to drift him past the defenses of ROGAL. He was within the net. The Alpha Legion Armada then powered up and began a raid on a fundamentally important position in the outer Sol system. On a moon of Pluto called Hydra, Alpharius was assailing the astropathic choir when he learned, to his regret, that again he had underestimated ROGAL Dorn. When the fleet of traitors has simply materialized within his defenses, Dorn reacted with lightning organization and led a scrambled fleet to stop him. The traitors had intended to strike and fade, as was the way of the Alpha Legion, but ROGAL Dorn was a master of void combat. That is, war in space. Dorn slung-shot his reactionary fleet around multiple celestial bodies and arrived to catch Alpharius in their act. Without hesitation, Dorn assessed the situation and his fleet attacked. ROGAL Dorn received reports that the traitor Primarch was personally leading a force of his elite Terminators into the very heart of the station on Hydra.
Oh, how I wanna see that in a movie. It's gonna be 10 times
Dorn appeared
more epic than Star
and found
Wars.
his brother in the act of slaughtering Imperial Fist defenders. The last to be found, he may have been, but he was a Primarch, and none save another Primarch could face one. So Dorn engaged him in close combat. The battle was fierce, and some say that it was only the act of an Imperial Fist grabbing the haft of the spear Alpharius had aimed at the hearts of Dorn that spared him. But the upshot was that Dorn took the strike on an unimportant segment of his body armor. Dorn, in one fluid movement, cut his brother's hands off, slashed Alpharius across the chest, then took Alpharius' spear and rammed it into him. Dorn then took his mighty chainsword, Storm's Teeth, and embedded it into Alpharius' skull, ending him instantly.
That's what you deserve.
The Alpha Legion retreated swiftly, and from that point on almost removed themselves from direct action, and merely provided information to Horus and the traitor command. But this was enough. Alpharius may have died in his raid, but he had discerned every last echelon of the defenses ROGAL had spent years constructing, and had already sent it to the War Master. Horus would know every last hard point, every last battery, sight and sinew at the defenses of Terra and the Sol system. Dorn, the part of the man that was a demigod of battle, strategist and War Master, was the one who executed Alpharius without missing a heartbeat. Perhaps it was the months of frustration, terrorist attacks, the open challenge, the rage he could not take out on Horus and the other traitors. It was the first time ROGAL Dorn had seen one of his foes in person, and the rage, built up over more than half a decade of horror, was white hot. Perhaps ROGAL might have mourned his brother, but he did not get the time nor space to even consider the brother he had never spent any time with, or built any bond with. Dorn knew that Horus Lupercal was on his way, and all the legions of hell were in his wake.
He did that? Ugh. He deserved to die.
And this is when the heavens opened, and the sun shone. For beyond all hope, a fleet arrived in the outer system, one that was loyal. The fleet that made its way at maximum speed toward Terra, and made contact. But not any fleet, not any legion, not just any Primarch. Dorn took the notification with stern compose. Of all those who could have arrived, to ROGAL, this must have been a dream come true, a balm to that so very weary soul. Of all that could have come, all that could have helped, his secret wish must have been for it to be this one. He had made it through the ruin storm. It was the Blood Angels.
Yes.
And on board was the one Primarch who could have made ROGAL sing with joy, if that was his way.
Of course.
It was his beloved, most trusted, most respected brother. It was the angel himself. At last, Sanguinius had come. ROGAL was no longer alone. They would face Horus and his vile scum together. Sanguinius was here. When they met, it was a somber occasion, as the two other would not be possible for Dorn.
Can't wait to read
He
that
must have
in the
felt the
books.
weight, the burden, lift ever so slightly. For if anyone could bring hope back to the beleaguered men, women, children of Terra, and even the war-weary Astartes of the Imperial Fists, it was the angel. Like a bright star he blazed, and ROGAL started to believe again. Just a little. Enough to go on. Enough to make those traitors pay. They may not live, they may not prevail, but with Sanguinius next to him, ROGAL could make a good end of it. He would fight. Even the warrior within, Dorn, must have quietly rejoiced. For none could steady the lines of the loyalist armies. None other could make them believe again as well. The angel had come, and he had brought his entire legion with him. The Blood Angels, the warriors of the Emperor's own wrath. The Imperial Fists would stand, but by their side would be the very manifestation of the Emperor's rage. Those traitors were in for a real fight now. Perhaps long enough for the lion or the wolf or the ultramarines to arrive. Perhaps, if they fought hard enough. Just perhaps.
Yep. Come on!
But
Speak!
scant time did they have before the inevitable began anew, and their forces of the traitors were detected. The armada of the traitors reached the Sol system and went about their onward plunge towards Terra itself. All the defenses of ROGAL were swept away, one by one, in detail, for Horus knew of them all, thanks to Alpharius and Omegon. But despite all of the knowledge and forewarning he had, the casual rate amongst the traitor fleet was eye-watering.
Oh yes.
If anything but the Emperor himself were not the target, then the traitors would have disengaged. The rings around Terra, the loyalist navy, the batteries on Luna, and every satellite, asteroid, and everything in between was arranged by ROGAL Dorn to punish the rebels, and punish them it did. Nor was their advance swift. For 30 days, the fleet was held at bay and cut to ribbons for its troubles. Horus and his brothers had to witness hundreds upon hundreds of their ships, a full quarter of their fleet, burned, blasted, and crushed. But on they came nonetheless. On to Terra.
Yeah.
The moment that the traitor fleet was in range, the bombardment began. Plasma and missiles, nuclear and chemical, rained down on the Imperial Palace and the whole of Terra. The birthplace of humanity, the center of the Imperium, was hit by a deluge of mass and corruption, destruction and death. The likes had never been seen before, even during the worst years of the Unification Wars. The traitors unleashed hell and maintained this assault for days on end.
Jesus.
Finally, when they had achieved what they set out to do, destroy as many defenses as possible, and so discord, confusion, terror, and death, did the firing cease and the landing begin. Drop pods. Think of a missile that strikes, and then instead of exploding, power-armored marines would run out, fill the skies, streaking towards the ground in their thousands. When this horror began, the sleeper units of Alpharius, those that were left, leapt into action and activated across the entire globe. In mere hours, The traitor marines were amongst the streets and defences of Terra. They massed and assaulted the two spaceports closest to the Imperial Palace, the Eternity Wall and Lion's Gate spaceports. Once secured, the heavens were filled with transports filled to the brim with the mortal armies of Horus. But one could not call them normal anymore. No, far from it. As the forces of the traitors arrived, they again lost eye-watering large proportions of their men and material, as ROGAL Dorn's defences and lasers, missiles and plasma rose up to cut them from the skies in their swathes. Debris rained across Earth, Terra, all with the blood of once loyal soldiers of the Imperium on them. But land in their millions they still did. Titans, 40 or more meter tall colossi of war, were landed as well. Much of the force then gathered before the very gates of the palace, cavorting, laughing, and in high spirits, despite the tithe exacted from them. None cared for their own dead, and all salivated at the chance to run amok in the very home of the master of mankind. ROGAL and Sanguinius would hold the palace. Jagatai, that lord of fast strike and savage raid, would be deployed beyond the walls. Also, because the White Scars would not do their best work on walls or parapets. ROGAL knew where to deploy his brother to the best effect, and thus he unleashed the Khan to do what he did best. Jagatai and his mighty White Scars would punish the traitors with swift strikes and undermine their deployment, harrying them wherever they left even a millimeter gap. A move that proved to be well made, for though Horus made his flanks unassailable, the great Khan found a gap and punished the traitors mightily. He later retook the Lion Gate spaceport and turned its guns on the incoming traitors and exacted a high price from them. Jagatai did move on the Eternity port, but was repelled. All the while he was harrying the forces of Horus, he was making sure they never had an easy time. He slew many in the name of the Emperor.
Hope so.
But for now, we must concentrate on the defense of the palace. More will be revealed during his own video. ROGAL was a whirlwind of orders, a flurry of control and direction, as he overwatched the defences not only of the palace, but of the entire planet of Terra. As a loyalist war master, he had to direct the entire defence. Thus it was his brother, Sanguinius, who manned the walls of the palace. But he saw, and what he saw must have revolted him on every level. Where the traitor armies had previously been entire sectors or systems away, they had been a foe to battle, but not a view. Now ROGAL could see exactly what they had become. As the forces of chaos, for they were not just rebel Astartes and soldiers anymore, massed before the walls of the palace, ROGAL viewed them close up for the first time through his screens. The vile mutations, the twisted forms, the degeneration of once proud brothers in arms into creatures of nightmare. Amongst the throng of corrupted Mechanicus, the baying soldiery, and possessed demonic Astartes, Angron pushed forward. He was huge, and his inner hate was now clearly marked on his body, for he had become a demon prince, and now little remained of his semblance. He had not only given up on his humanity, he had become the very thing that the Great Crusade had striven against. A twisted thing of evil. And surrounding them all were the worst demons and minions of the warp that had been summoned, endless tides poured forth by the vile rites of the Thousand Suns. So much for Magnus's innocence. Yeah. These men showed Rogal and Sanguinius all that they needed to know about the poor, misguided son. The legions of vileness were almost uncountable. Angron strode forward and bellowed at the defending warriors, stating that they were alone and without refuge, support, or means of escape. He derided them and taunted that they should surrender now and beg for his mercy. The mortal soldiery would have cowered, the States been sapped of their resolve, even the redoubtable and bluff imperial fists, but for his brother. Sanguinius stood atop the walls and sneered at Angron, his light and courage providing hope to all those who would have run. Sanguinius's mere presence, an example, was enough. Some say that he telepathically communicated with the horror that was previously Angron, but all it appeared to those around and below was one simple statement, a look that said it all. Bring it on, scum. Angron bellowed his laughter to the sky, and all around him knew that he relished the fight to come. But some say that he quietly quaked, for why else did he return to his lines instead of assailing the angel directly? Other reports state that the angel went out and sallied forth and fought Angron directly, but then retreated back behind the shielding of the wall. So many differing tales. Such an important moment. Rogal could see the legions of his erstwhile comrades turn to unmistakable evil. They wore it with such pride. He could see representatives of so many legions, yet he did not feel terror. He only felt his resolve strengthen, for nothing more than this sight could have told him without any doubt that he was on the side of light. So the battle was joined. A battle so in-depth and drawn out that I must only mention those parts most relevant to the story of Rogal Dorn here. I hope to be able to cover this topic, this mighty clash of arms, from many angles, but today, let us speak of Rogal and his experience. Okay. Thrice were the enemy thrown back from the walls, but ever they came on. Punishment beyond count was dealt to them by the indomitable imperial fists and their wrathful blood angel brothers. But the tide of numbers was inexhaustible, and they were pushed back. For weeks the battle raged. Weeks. Each time the traitors and their demon minions breached a barrier or defensive line, they believed it would be the last, that the will of the defenders would sour, and they would run amok at last, only to find that Rogal Dorn had been so very busy in the years that they had been winning battles. The overlapping fire arcs, the warrens of tunnels, the traps, the defences Dorn had erected can only be described with one word: magnificent. Even so, they finally failed. A massed push by the enemy led to the central section of the defender's line collapsing through attrition alone. For no blood angel or fist retreated from anything or anyone without specific orders from Rogal. The two legions would always be brothers, like no other from this point on, or so they thought. But the line was broken, and there was but one gate left. The final gate into the palace's inner sanctum, the Eternity Gate. But fists, soldiery, and angels were trapped on the other side, and Rogal could not extricate them in time. They were in danger of being butchered. It was then that Rogal would have gone to the front himself to save them, to buy them time, for the gate had to be closed. It had to be. But Rogal desperately did not wish for his or his brother's men, or those loyal humans who had fought so valiantly, to be left to the hordes of evil. It was then that his brother, Sanguinius, took up his sword and spear again, and strode forth. We do not know what was said then between these two close brothers, but Sanguinius would have stated what Dorn knew, that he, the Emperor's chosen war master, could not be the one. So Sanguinius went out to meet the hordes of evil, to buy time, the precious time needed for their flank forces to retreat into the inner palace. So Rogal was left behind to organize, to order, to watch the chevrons of his men and the Blood Angels moving toward the gates. But ever would his eye be flicking to the one screen that mattered the most, the one containing his brother, the angel, Sanguinius. And what a spectacle he saw that day! For in all of the annals of the human race, no martial display could compare. The forces of chaos could see their goal and their hackles were up, their mouths watering at the prospect of gaining the gate and cutting off the fists and blood angels outside. But more than this, every last one wished the glory and the perverse joy of being the first to get into the palace's entry. No small amount of them relished also the thought of killing the Emperor's pretty angel. So they threw all they had at him.
Jesus.
As the clock ticked, the chevrons moved, the time passed. Dorn was concerned, more concerned than he had been before, as if the angel fell, it would open the gates to the enemy, but also the crushing effect on morale would be untenable. The angel had to succeed. Each man, soldier or Astartes that passed the angel into the inner sanctum was one more chance, one more second, one more warrior to hold the line. 1 second closer to him giving the order to allow the angel to stand down and for the great gates to be closed. For the man inside the armor, for Rogal, these were the longest moments of his life, he thought then. As every second ticked by, he witnessed his brother fighting as no human had ever fought. He was magnificent. Dorn knew he had to remain aloof, stoic, stable, for all those who watched. One whiff of panic, one single display of doubt or emotion could have swept across his command staff like a tsunami. Belief. He had to project confidence and calm, all the while screaming inside, "Not Sanguinius. Not him."
Jesus
As
Christ.
he watched his brother give no quarter and no ground. Where a round would bounce off his artificer armor, Sanguinius let it hit. Where it would not, he evaded. He was shot at by endless adversaries, but with a blur of activity. When the enemy Astartes, twisted, possessed, or demons themselves, charged him in their throngs, Rogal's heart must have been in his throat. Yet always the angel prevailed. He pushed them back time and time again. Tens unto hundreds. He did it alone, and he did this for not minutes, but hours. Sanguinius held the gate alone for hours.
I just imagine
But
this.
he ran out of time.
I do. I'm so immersed. Just watching this picture, almost can see it.
As some of the last of the loyalists passed him, the palace itself shuddered. A footfall of such size and power that the very ground itself reverberated to its impact. A great wailing came from amongst the demons and traitors alike, a baying, heralding an oncoming victory. For one had come, the last thing Rogal would have wanted to see. To quote, "A huge shape rose up amongst the armies of Horus. The creature was tall, taller than any around it, and as it rose up it unfolded its great leathery wings and took to the air. It was a bloodthirster, greater demon of Khorne, the most fearsome and dangerous of the bloody god's entourage. The demon flew towards Sanguinius, and he recognized it instantly. Its name was Kabanda, and he had fought the creature before. End quote. Onwards he strode to meet the angel in the air and issued his challenge. Dorn stood impassive, but how Rogal must have wished to scream at the screen. "Brother, get out! Get out of there!" To Rogal's horror, Sanguinius strode forth and took to the air to meet the vile creature from the deepest depths of hell, to meet his onward rush. And in that moment he saw, as all did, both chaos and royalist, the microcosm of the macrocosm, good versus evil, light versus darkness, humanity against demon. The huge bulk of Kabanda came on with such force that none could fathom. None could understand how one man, for Sanguinius was a Primarch, an angel, but he was also a man, could face such a being and live. Rogal must have wanted to derelict his post, must have wanted to rush outside to help, to save his brother, to save the very hope of the imperium, if Sanguinius were to fall. But the fury of the battle was locked, and he, as the dutiful son of the Emperor, his war master, had sworn to defend all of the imperium. He could not move. He could not abandon his charges, the entire race, even for this hallowed son, this beloved brother. So he watched in terror. To quote, atop the ultimate gate, two mighty figures clashed in aerial combat. Both were winged. The angel's wings were pure white and shone brightly through the smoke and smog of war. The other was a creature of nightmare, its demonic wings leathery and dark. As they wheeled above each other in the air, the warring troops below seemed to pause to watch the unfolding drama. "Know this, creature of darkness. I will take my revenge on you for past evil," said the angel, as he plunged his sword into the demon's face, spearing one of its eyes.
Yes.
The demon shrieked, as if in pain, but wheeled about, lashing at the Primarch with its whip and chopping at him with its great axe. The demon's whip stung the Primarch's wing, and he faltered in the air slightly. As he did so, the bloodthirster grabbed him by the throat with its massive taloned fist. Sanguinius cut with his sword against the demon's flank. The beast flinched, but did not release. "Now you are finished, pathetic little bird," rumbled the demon, and he threw the Primarch down onto the gate below. The granite stone splintered as the Primarch's body smashed into it. The traitor horde watching roared their approval. The Primarch lay still upon the broken stone as the demon landed next to him and prepared to deal the death blow. The monster's creature threw back its head and let loose a howl of exultation. "Blood for the blood god, a skull for the skull throne." As the demon howled in triumph over him, Sanguinius drew up, his last reserves of strength and power. With a massive effort, he painfully rose to face Kabanda for the last time. "Your cry of victory is mistimed, demon. I am not finished. My vengeance has yet to be taken. I shall not fall at this hour, not at your bloodied hand." And at this, Sanguinius leapt at the demon and seized it by the wrist and ankle, and he raised the beast high and smashed it down across his knee. The crack of its back breaking shook the masonry upon which they stood and echoed across the palace grounds.
Oh, yeah.
The hordes below watched in silence. Sanguinius, now terrible in his aspect, lifted the carcass of the demon above his head. An arc of power danced in his brow as he swung the body around and hurled the broken behemoth into the midst of the demon followers. The traitors beat their chests and wailed in dismay. The blood angels cheered, and the ultimate gate was shut. End quote.
Yes.
Thus did the gate close, and Rogal must have felt the most relief he had ever done in his life. For Sanguinius had survived, and had dealt a major wound, to the morale of the animals that beset them.
Oh, that was awesome.
Thus it was the palace was held. And how long did all of this last? Rogal and Sanguinius inside, Jagatai outside. The battle had lasted for 55 days.
What?
55 days. Against twice their number of Primarchs. Now infused with the power of the dark gods, some of them being demons unto themselves, evil augmenting their strength, with entire or part of 6 legions against a mere 3. Yet Rogal had held them for 55 days.
I am speechless.
And so, gentle listener, the dreaded moment draws near.
Okay. We did it. We did it! We watched part 2. Oh my god, this was amazing. Okay. Oh, Kevin, hi too. Whew. Through this whole thing, I was just so into each picture that I'm just like, okay, I can imagine this. I can imagine this. Oh my gosh, please somebody make this CGI someday. Somebody just visualize it. You know, I'm just gonna be so happy if that happened. I mean, I just so badly want to see this. In what book is this moment present, guys? So, as I've said, I'm gonna start Horus Heresy from the beginning, the first 3 books. But I don't know exactly in what book is this moment from. So if you can tell me, that's gonna be awesome. I would appreciate that. I wanna, well, I'm not gonna like jump ahead, but I'd love to hear the audiobook of that, Eventually, I'm gonna get to there. Sanguinius were so epic. So epic. I am starting everything, so yeah. 4 or 5? Oh, okay. 4 or 5. First have to get to 1, 2, 3. And then look at my list. What is next? Because, I just have this recommendation list, and some books are skipped because they were not worth it. But this book should be one of the books that are counted as worth it, so I will not miss it. Okay, Blade, bye to you. Whew, okay, guys, that was awesome. It was super long, so I am okay. Okay, Patrick, that's awesome. So I want to play a game now, although it's very late, but I want to try to play for the first time god damn it. Oh, Death Stranding. I'm just so much in 40k right now. So yeah, I want to play Death Stranding for a bit, see how it is. And yeah, I never played that. It's gonna be interesting. So I'm gonna make a brief stream in a bit and start playing that. If you want to join me for this gaming session, well, you're welcome. So for everyone else, see you next time. Tomorrow we have to have text-to-speech and maybe something added. Doing 2 a day, it's not very easy, but I just wanna, I can't get enough of 40k anyway. But yeah, if I have time, I'm gonna do 2 of something a day, and we're going to finish with this actually maybe tomorrow. So maybe tomorrow is gonna be this in text-to-speech. Nevertheless, I'm gonna let you know. Anything else, guys? Siege of Terra, okay, makes sense. Final, okay. Okay, guys. Like I said, I'm not gonna miss it anyway. But thank you for letting me know. So, I'm gonna prepare for the next stream. If you like to support me, guys, you know where that is. You can become a member of the Imperium. Check out the community tab for the vectors that I posted there. Vector JPEGs, JPEGs and one PNG. And yeah, if you'd like to support me, you can always also join my OnlyFans for meaningful sex educational content. And yeah, guys, thank you very much. Till next time with me, Gary Reviews. This was freaking amazing. I'm probably gonna dream about this tonight. Yeah, I probably am. So thank you. Kissing you, my dear Gary T's Golden Astartes. Bye bye.